Hi guys! Today we'll be recapping a story called Death to the White Ferret Weasel. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Enjoy! This story begins with a young, angelic-looking boy being told a story by his grandma, the story of the kings of Balhalla. It tells the story of the last princess of the magical Valhalla kingdom, which disappeared hundreds of years ago, Noel. An evil magician had stolen the treasure of the first magician and wanted to use it to destroy the world, but the princess was a strong magician herself, so she used forbidden destruction magic to defeat him. But ultimately, it led to the destruction of Balhalla and herself. The young boy seems to be enthralled by her. In a snowy forest, a ferret is friends with a pack of wolves, who refer to her as Princess. The alpha, Cedric, sends her to meet his wife as they found a hair accessory that used to be from Valhalla. The princess goes to the wolf's cave to meet Anna. She uses her magic healing powers to heal her exhaustion, and as Anna gives her the hair accessory, the ferret remembers her time as Noel, Princess of Balhalla. Cedric then comes rushing, informing them that hunters have entered the woods again, and furious, Noel tells them that she will not allow them to come in again. The leader of the hunters is none other than the grown-up boy, King of Pallirod, Soaz von Ramaliel. Noel tells the wolves to evacuate the foxes and to collect all the mountain wolves, and she emits a roar calling out for all of them that is heard by the hunters. The lead hunter, Sven, tells the king that there are rumors of a beast inhabiting the forest, which is being called the White Goblin of Agobus, as it's said to be covered in white fur and bear green glowing eyes. Soaz's bodyguard, Schloss, is terrified, telling the king they should head back. But he's more curious than afraid. Soaz asks Sven if anyone has ever been killed by it, and thinking back, he realizes that all the people that saw it survived. To calm Schloss down, Soaz gives him a bag of dried meat. The relationship between the two is very comical, as Soaz seems to be babysitting Schloss more than Schloss protects him. They arrive at their temporary campsite, and Soaz notices some seagulls circling above them, finding it curious as it doesn't seem to be location appropriate for them. One of the seagulls steals the bag of dried meat from Schloss, so Soaz concludes that they were just looking for food, while being amused by Schloss's attempt at bringing them down with a bow and arrow. Suddenly, they notice that they are completely surrounded by wolves and a creature bearing green glowing eyes. The wolves leap at them, attacking them while bearing glowing blue eyes. The men defend themselves with swords, but no matter how much they slash at them, the wolves never seem to get injured. Schloss and Soaz are completely surrounded, and they notice the wolves are targeting Soaz. He wonders why this may be, and then remembers he had sent out an order 6 months ago to do a big fox hunt in the forest, thinking maybe the wolves are taking revenge for their friends. Soaz notices his horse is still alive, and so he tells Schloss he'll lure the wolves away from them so that they can evacuate. Schloss protests, telling him he needs to be protected as well, but Soaz is too stubborn and ignores him. Soaz then hops onto his horse and gallops away from the men while the wolves follow him. Suddenly, he falls from a cliff and is surrounded by wolves while laying wounded on the ground. Noel approaches him, already fainted, and touches his cheek while a burst of light glows all around him. Soaz wakes up in a cave next to a fire. He remembers his fall and hears a female voice, wondering if it belongs to whoever saved him. He tries getting up, but his body is too damaged. Noel approaches him, and Soaz tries petting her, but she protests, surprising him as he's able to understand her. Astounded, Noel asks him if he can hear her voice, and he says he can. Soaz is also quite astonished, believing he's in a dream. He lays down to keep on sleeping, but his rumbling tummy makes him face reality. Noel tells him he slept for 3 days, so he should be hungry, giving him grass root to eat. Soaz asks her how come he didn't die from the fall, and Noel confesses to him that she's a mage. He seems to be extremely excited by having met a mage, as his favorite stories involved magic that is said to have disappeared hundreds of years prior. Elated and fanboying hard, he begs a quite confused Noel to give him an autograph, even revealing his chest to have her sign there. Noel is quite surprised that he believes her, but he tells her that if she's able to use magic, then the whole situation makes sense. At the same time, he confesses that it's been his lifelong dream to meet a mage. Noel asks him why he calls her a mage instead of a magician, and overflowing with excitement, he tells her that in ancient times, the term used to refer to them was mage rather than magicians. But Noel seems to be quite upset by him calling her times ancient, as she remembers everything in Valhalla clearly. Soaz then notices the cave is full of antiques and recognizes an emblem of the ancient kingdom of Balhalla, telling Noel all excited that it is his favorite ancient civilization, asking her if she's a mage of Balhalla. However, she's furious and tells him that she didn't intend to save him at first, telling him that she knows that hunting is just a show for him, but it was a deep loss for the foxes who grieved their murdered siblings. She only saved him because she recognized him as the emperor and knows he's the only one who can stop the hunting in Agobus once and for all. Soaz kneels before her and apologizes for his action, taking full responsibility. Noel tells him he'll return to his land and never set foot in the woods again, neither him nor any other hunter. Soaz seems to have received the message, but he's still fanboying over having met a mage, and asks Noel to shake his hand. She's surprised, but does it anyway, and when asked her name, she tells him it's Noel, not wanting to reveal her true identity. When she finds out that he's the Emperor of Pallirod, she starts feeling bad for him, as his kingdom's land is cursed with eternal winter because of the magic she used to defeat the evil magician way back. It's been a few days since Soaz woke up, and Noel is only able to provide him with grass fruit to eat as the place is quite barren. Soaz starts to complain, and Noel won't take any of it, calling him an ungrateful human. Amused by her anger, Soaz also asks her why he hasn't seen her eat anything in the time they've spent together. She calms down and tells him that ever since she woke up as a ferret, she's never been hungry, nor died. Soaz is about to pet her in order to comfort her, but she becomes feisty again, scolding him for being so picky. He seems to be worried about malnutrition, and suddenly he remembers he has some apple jam cookies in his coat. As he brings out his cookie pouch, Noel recognizes the bag and shows him the beef jerky bag the seagulls had stolen from Schloss. Noel is extremely excited to see Soaz has apple jam cookies, as she hasn't had any since she was human. She cutely asks him to give her some, but after dying of a cuteness overload, he proposes they make a deal. He tells her that he'll give her the cookies in exchange for a loaf of meat, arguing that he'll die of malnutrition if he keeps on eating grass fruit. After pondering it a bit, she finally agrees, telling him she'll go to the wolves to ask for some meat. He tells her he wants to go with her as he wants to apologize to them, even though she warns him that she won't take responsibility if anything happens to him. They leave the cave and start heading towards the wolves' lair. Soaz seems to be harboring loads of questions he wants to ask Noel. He appears to be tying the dots on her real identity, connecting her green eyes, the fact that she used to be a mage of Valhalla, and the name she gave him, coming to the suspicion that she may be the last princess Clasha Noel, whom he so adored as a child. He calls for her, wanting to ask her a million questions, but decides now is not the time and makes up a random excuse as to why he called for her, showing part of his chest to her, making her wonder about his mental health. I mean, same. They finally reach Cedric, who's enraged at Noel for having brought the human to them. He tells her that the human may betray them and bring more hunters to the woods, but she defends him, reassuring Cedric that Soaz doesn't seem to be that sort of man at all. Cedric calms down after Noel asks him to trust her, and Noel asks Soaz if he can understand Cedric's voice as he can her own, but he doesn't seem to be able to. She tells Soaz that Cedric's the leader of the Grey Wolves and that he brought him to the cave when he was injured after the fall. Soaz thanks him for saving his life and then apologizes profoundly for having ordered the hunting of the foxes. He tells him he'll prohibit hunting in the Agobus forest from now on, asking Cedric to give him a chance to right his wrongs. Pretty mature of him. Cedric seems to believe him and goes to look for meat to give them. Back in the capital Pallirod, Schloss's uncle, Duke of Pallirod, David von Errington, has arrived and is furiously yelling at Schloss for having abandoned Soaz in the woods. Honestly, Schloss seems to be too relaxed about it in my opinion. The Duke hits him and follows him while waving his sword at him, completely enraged and consumed by worry. He talks about how he adopted him when he was 5, and wonders how a cold body like his could endure a harsh winter of Agobus. Schloss reminds him that it's not unusual for Soaz to go running into adventures and that he always returns home safely, telling him that he has a hunch that he's alive and well, probably having fun hunting in the woods. His uncle finally calms down and is more worried than angry. In the meantime, Soaz doesn't seem to be having such a harsh time, as he's just finished eating the meat given by the wolves, all while lying down next to a fire on a heap of hay. He takes Noel and places her on his tummy. She's a bit annoyed at first, but then lets herself relax in the warmth of his tummy, while starting to doze off. However, Soaz snaps her out of it by telling her that jade eyes are the emblematic eye color of the Balhalla royal family, calling her by her real name, Clasha Noel. She tells him he's right, and he seems elated to meet her. She asks him how he knows so much about her, and he informs her that, to her surprise, there are still old ruins of the Valhalla capital, Hadern, in the northern region of Pallirod, where there's a land with remains of magic in which it's spring all year round. Soaz tells Noel that even though most of the ruins were almost completely in shambles, the library of Heimdallr was salvageable in places. He apparently found a basement full of ancient books of the time of Balhalla, and he found a portrait of her in one of them. He seems to be really proud and happy about it, telling her all excitedly that the research on Balhalla is really progressing thanks to his findings. However, Noel is shaking in fear and anguish upon realizing that the spell she used to destroy her homeland wasn't effective after all and didn't destroy it completely, fearing she may have killed everyone and everything she loved for nothing. She now realizes her curse, living eternally while having to face her sins. Soaz is really worried about her, holding her shaking body in his arms as she appears to be in a state of shock. She fears the dark mage she tried to stop might still be alive, even though she knows that the world is going through a really peaceful time, so she doubts it. Noel recovers and asks Soaz about the state of the data he got from the library. He tells her he recovered a total of 100,000 books, and tells her shyly that he had them all moved from the ruins to the royal castle to restore and preserve them. Noel is furious, asking him how he could have managed to move all those copies, but he just tells her he had a lot of help. Finally, Noel asks him to take her to Heimdallr. Noel is hoping to find something hidden in the basement, something which might even kill her. Soaz, who's quick on the uptake, asks her if there are any secret rooms in the basement, as she's asking him to go to the ruins rather than go to the castle to see the books. She tells him he's right, and asks him to pack some things for her for their trip. While Soaz is packing away, Noel asks him if he doesn't hate her for having tried to kill him. Nonchalantly, he tells her he can't hate her because he likes her, making her turn crimson red in embarrassment. She asks him how he could ever like a weasel, but he just replies that she's not really a weasel and that he used to spend a lot of time looking at her portrait, imagining what she'd be like. Well, he's a true fanboy, I'll give him that. Noel then asks him about his hair color, telling him it's her first time seeing someone have color like melted silver, and he tells her it's only found in his family. At the same time, she asks him if it's common for people to have different eye color than hair color, as in her time, they used to be the same in people, and he tells her that's right. Then, Noel tells him that M is waiting for her, leaving Soaz quite perplexed at who that may be. It turns out M is his horse, who he thought had died in the fall. Noel was able to save it, and so they are heading to meet with it. However, to everyone's surprise, M charges towards Soaz the moment it sees him. Apparently, our friend M is not angry at Soaz, but instead extremely excited to see him. So excited, in fact, that she can't seem to be able to control herself, even blushing when thinking that Soaz knows her name and shying away from him. Noel asks M, astonished, if she likes him, and she tells her she does, telling her that he's the kind and sincere man she knows. Thus, Noel encourages her to go greet him. Noel calls for Soaz to come closer to M, who greets him warmly, even licking his face. Soaz asks Noel to say sorry to M for him, but she tells him that she can understand him to some extent. Noel then tells Soaz that she has to look for something in her home before they go, informing him that the cave they were staying at is not her actual home, but rather, she lives in a tree. She climbs up a tree and goes in a hole in the trunk, emerging once again with a golden necklace around her neck. Soaz asks her what she's wearing, and she tells him he should know if he studied so much about her. Noel tells him she isn't sure what type of metal it's made of, but that it's a treasure brought by the first mage, calling it a source of magic. The necklace is said to have been brought to those lands by the first witch, Ostara. It used to be made up of the golden chain and a jade-colored rock, and it's said to be the origin of magic. The story of Ostara and the necklace is the founding story of Balhalla, as before the witch arrived, the northern regions of those lands used to be so barren that people would freeze and starve to death. Upon seeing this, Ostara decided to share her magic with everyone, and so she drew a magic circle and placed the necklace in the middle, dispersing its magical powers and allowing any human to be able to learn magic. She stayed there and taught people how to use the magic, and eventually enough people started following her that the kingdom of Valhalla was born. The necklace was to be passed down from generation to generation in the royal family of Balhalla, along with its meaning. But Valhalla got destroyed before Noel got to learn it. She tells Soaz that when she first woke up as a weasel, she found the chain next to her, but the jade rock, called the Watch's Eye Rock, was nowhere to be found, and unless those pieces are together, they won't work. Noel then informs Soaz that they'll be departing for their journey the next morning, telling him she'll go say goodbye to the wolf cubs. Soaz reminds Noel for a second of a girl with blue hair whom she calls Dalmia, but she quickly snaps out of it. They start heading out of the mountains while Noel asks Soaz if no one's looking for him, given that he's been missing for quite a number of days already. He smiles, telling her he brought along with him the least loyal subordinate, Schloss, but probably the other subordinates must be looking for him. Noel's asking him whether they should go to the palace or not when a seagull intercepts them and calls out for Noel. He tells her it's an emergency. Apparently, an army of armed men entered the woods and are heading towards the wolves. Cedric wants to hold them down, but they are alone without her. Noel figures they must be in search of Soaz, so she commands him to ride the horse as fast as possible towards the men, before they harm any wolves. The men are led by the Duke, and Soaz remembers he's a relentless and merciless man who'll go through the whole pack if necessary, and so they gallop back as fast as possible. The army is already face to face with the wolves, and Noel and Soaz don't think they'll make it in time to stop the fighting from starting. They are even too far for them to hear them yelling at them to stop, and so Noel issues the roar of the White Goblin, wanting to at least deter the men from attacking. The men are shocked and terrified by the sound of her cry, but the Duke insists on charging onto the wolves. Luckily, Soaz throws his dagger and deflects their attention just in time to come leaping in the middle of the men and the wolves, ordering everyone to stop their attack. Both Cedric and the Duke are surprised to see Noel and Soaz appear before them. Noel and Soaz then go stand beside the wolves, facing the men, while Soaz implores them to lower their weapons. With a bit of reluctance from the Duke, Soaz finally manages to make them disarm, making Cedric amazed at how the conflict was able to be solved without fighting. Once again, Noel bids her farewell to Cedric and the wolves, who bow after her as she goes with Soaz with the men. Next morning in the village next to the Agobus forest, a new sign is placed telling everyone that it is now prohibited to enter the Agobus forest, saying that because of the presence of the White Goblin, it is too dangerous. While in the carriage heading towards the capital of Pallirod, Noel makes a fuss at Soaz for having made her seem like the villain in the prohibition of entering Agobus, but he just explains that it was the only way he could issue such a law without protest from the villagers. Noel also asks him what will happen to the hunters who lost their jobs, but he confidently tells her that he has a new job lined up for them. Apparently, paper is a very rare resource for them as they make it out of leather, making it really expensive. He explains that thanks to information he found in Valhalla's library, he now knows how to produce paper out of trees, and so intends to start a paper-making business. As they enter the Imperial Palace, Soaz and Noel hear some maids talking about him, saying they heard he can talk to animals and how he stopped the wolves with just one word, making Noel crack up as they say that he's greater than the mage of Balhalla. Soaz then takes Noel to his office, entertaining her with apple jam cookies while he works through piles of paperwork that piled up during his absence. As he's working, Soaz asks her why she has a last name, Kalasha, as he learned that in ancient times only the royal family had a last name. She tells him it was a way to honor Ostara, the first witch, and only the descendants of the Balhalla dynasty would bear the last name, as they were also the only ones who could use magic without needing to borrow from her magic, meaning from the necklace and stone. Soaz is shocked at this piece of information, and Noel just tells him it's because magic flows in their bodies, and that's why they were the only ones with the jade-colored hair and eyes. With every new thing Noel tells him about her past, Soaz seems to fall more and more in love with her. telling her his heart explodes when he thinks how she'd be once she broke her curse and became human again. Excitedly, he leads an annoyed and embarrassed Noel to the place in the palace where he kept the books from the Heimdallr. He tells her how he organized the books, looking for Noel for approval, and with an eager smiling face, she tells him it was really useful. Soaz immediately turns red, picking Noel up and spinning her around as he tells her that they can have a future together. However, Noel is having some pretty bad flashbacks regarding another man, telling her that everything happened because she didn't understand his feelings for her. With a gloomy look on her face, Noel asks Soaz to put her down. He tries telling her he understands he may not be enough for her now, but Noel cuts him off immediately, telling him that's not the issue. She informs him that the real reason she's going to Heimdallr is because she wants to find a book with forbidden magic that's hidden in a secret room. That book is also a treasure of Ostara, like the necklace, and contains information about the first magic and also about dark magic. It's said to make the readers go mad, but she was always attracted to dark magic, and so she hopes that being in the body of a weasel will make her immune to becoming mad. However, she tells him it's a gamble she's playing with her own soul, and he asks her, concerned, if she's telling him she's gonna die. She tells him he's right. She wants to succeed in the use of the destruction magic this time, wanting to destroy herself along with the necklace and the book once and for all, so they won't fall into the wrong hands. Soaz protests, telling her that as long as the chain and jewel are separate, they would be safe, but Noel tells him that they could be put together again eventually. She also thanks him for loving her, but she's decided she wants to die. She tells him how she suffered every day for the past 1,000 years, being immortal and trapped inside the weasel's body, always dreaming about the day she destroyed her kingdom and killed everyone she loved to defeat the evil magician. Thus, she grabs Soaz's hands and asks him to help her die. Soaz immediately hugs her, and with tears flowing down his cheeks, he apologizes to her for being so short-sighted. She hugs him back, consoling him, but eventually whispers in his ear, asking him where her portrait is. He tells her it's in his room, but my girl Noel is not even surprised at his obsession anymore, even though she's a bit disturbed by him offering to take her there after dinner. Then, Soaz asks her if there are any books in particular she needs, and she asks him to go fetch 3 books for her. As he goes looking for them, once he's far enough from Noel, Soaz breaks down sobbing, wishing for Noel not to die. In the meantime, Noel is feeling the effects of the magical residue on the books from Heimdallr, which are even strong enough to make Ostara's magic chain vibrate. Noel then starts thinking about how she can use the little magic residue in that room to make a spell. Once Soaz returns with the book she asked for, Noel asks him how long it would take them to go to Heimdallr. Soaz tells her that at best 3 days, but Noel tells him that she can cut that down to 30 seconds, telling him to go look for paper and a quill. Once he's returned with the elements Noel needs to do the spell to take them there, Noel tries drawing a magic circle with her tiny weasel hands, but is unable to. Soaz takes the quill from her, defeated, when Noel tells him that all is not lost as he can draw the magic circle instead of her. Soaz is a bit taken aback by Noel's confidence in him, but she tells him that as long as he draws everything she tells him to, everything should work fine. Noel explains everything he has to draw and the reason behind it, and after a while, Soaz finishes the magic circle. Noel informs him that she'll be departing to Heimdallr in 3 days' time, and asks him to have the ruins closed to visitors when she gets there, and he immediately agrees to make those arrangements for her. 3 days later in his office, Soaz is visited by the Duke, and they begin discussing their next move regarding their exports to the neighboring kingdom, Krihubur. It seems that's the kingdom that they were going to send the foxes for to, but Soaz has decided not to trade fox fur anymore to protect Agobis, so they expect some sort of retaliation from Krihubur's monarch, as it is in their land that they found Heimdallr and its books. Soaz tells the Duke that he doesn't plan to trade with them anymore, and that his plan on how to deal with them will depend on how their emperor will react to his decision. At the same time, the Duke asks Soaz if he's planning on leaving the palace again, as he's ordered the ruins to be cleared of visitors. Soaz debates whether to tell him why he needed to clear the ruins, but finally decides not to, mentioning that Noel said something about irresistible power. The Duke is utterly confused by Soaz's mention of a woman, as he didn't know he had a lover, and the only other sentient being he's seen him with recently has been a weasel. Well, in his defense, there's no reason for him to suspect that Soaz is in love with a weasel, which we sorta know to be true. Soaz decides not to tell the Duke the truth, as he doesn't want to expose Noel, but the Duke ends up surprising him by asking him how he didn't tell him. Well, Soaz's worries that the Duke might have picked up on who Noel really is are quickly dissipated, as the Duke seems to be upset because he thinks Soaz has met the woman he wants to marry but didn't tell him about it, rather than being upset at him for being in love with a weasel. He holds a deep bond with him as his parents died when he was young, and so he adopted him and raised him as his own ever since. Soaz seems to pick up on the Duke's concerns and tries to clarify the situation, but the Duke is already upset. Soaz, amused by the Duke, tells him that he doesn't know if the woman will become queen, as he thinks that the love is platonic on his side, making the Duke go berserk, telling him he's the most handsome man alive. He tries guessing who this woman is, throwing names of different noble women at Soaz while looking for confirmation from him. Soaz only tells him she's 24 years old, and with that, he comes to the conclusion that Soaz is in love with the third princess of Krehuber. Soaz then receives a picnic basket from a servant and tells the Duke he'll be going for a picnic with Noel, the weasel. He heads out for the library, the Duke following close behind, and once he arrives, he tells the Duke not to follow him any further. Poor thing. He's left alone and heartbroken at the doors of the library. The guards standing outside the library doors are starting to get concerned as some loud noises are coming from inside. They wonder whether they should go in, but one of them reminds the other that Soaz told them not to intrude, no matter what they heard, leaving the guard quite frightened. The other guards insist they check what's going on, but a bright flash of light makes them get away from the doors, completely terrified, until it all suddenly goes quiet. The teletransportation magic seems to have worked, and Noel and Soaz are now in Heimdallr. While heading to the basement, Soaz tells Noel that they were able to discover its entrance because a hole opened up in the ground when an earthquake hit the site 50 years ago. This makes Noel wary, as she knows earthquakes are not usual in that area, making her suspicious that maybe there might be someone else that can use magic other than her who caused the earthquake in order to open up their way to the basement. This worries Noel, as she fears someone already went into the hidden room before her and already took the book of forbidden magic. They hurry down to the basement, where Noel identifies with her sense of smell that the hidden room's entrance lies behind a huge bookshelf. She doubts Soaz is strong enough to move it and reveal the entrance, but to her surprise, he moves it swiftly, revealing a knobless entrance. Noel and Soaz look around the whole room and inspect the door closely, trying to find some hidden device or something that will allow them to open it. However, they are unable to find anything that might open it, so in frustration, Noel kicks the wall with her tiny foot, obviously making her foot hurt, but not so obviously, opening the door. Surprised that her kick worked, they head down the dark passage that appeared before them, lit only by a lantern held by Soaz. Noel is cutely hiding inside Soaz's jacket, and when Soaz points out that she's afraid the intruder might still be there, she stubbornly replies that she's in his jacket because it's cold. Suddenly, they hear a voice talking to them, telling them that it shouldn't be cold for their new guests. Following that, 2 rows of fire appear on either side of the passage, lighting up the way. Noel asks Soaz to drop her off, wanting to face off whatever is talking to them and controlling the fires. She introduces herself as Clasha Leonuel, last mage and princess of Balhalla, and asks the voice its name. The voice tells her they're the watchman who guards that place and issues a ball of light, asking them to follow it. As they follow the light, the voice admits it used to be human, telling them that it used to go on brave adventures and even was a warrior. Noel and Soaz encounter a huge stone wall on their path, and they try bringing it to the voice's attention, but it's too entertained talking about its life to hear them. So Noel goes off and yells at it that the road is blocked. The voice opens the road for them, also telling Noel that she has a character like her mother's. Noel is at first angered at the voice for talking so carelessly about her mother, but she then understands that the voice belongs to no other than the first mage, Clasha Altraelse. The hidden room appears to be the resting place of Altraelse's remains. Noel is utterly embarrassed and wants nothing but to disappear, remembering how disrespectful she was towards the ghost of her ancestor. Soaz snaps her back to reality by making her notice that the forbidden book is missing, realizing her fear is true and the intruder did manage to steal it. Soaz asks Altraelse if she saw the thief, but she tells them that before she answers that, she wants to know why Noel called herself the last mage of Valhalla. With sadness in her voice, Noel tells her that in her time, there was a runaway mage that tried coveting all the power of Ostara, and she tells her that she's now the last mage left alive and that magic disappeared from the world a long time ago. Altraelse blames herself, thinking the magic she released onto the world ended up causing destruction, but Noel tells her it's her fault. Noel then tells her it was she who took care of the runaway mage, and Altrelze seems surprised but proud of her, remembering how her mother used to go there and speak of her great achievements often. She then turns gloomy, remembering how no one came to see her after her mother, and how she sensed once that Valhalla had been destroyed. She opens up to them about how lonely she felt, so much so that she ended up falling into a deep sleep and was woken up by the commotion of the intruder breaking in, but only woke up after he had gone with the book. She tells them he must be using the book called Galder to build his magic powers, but it obviously failed. However, she remembers in the last chapter, there's a spell to increase one's lifespan, making Noel and Soaz fear the intruder may still be young and healthy, even 50 years after stealing the book. Altrelze keeps rambling on about the power of Galder, and Noel tries to be patient with her, being her ancestor and all, and upon noticing this, Soaz interrupts Altrelze's rambling and asks her why she became a guardian of that book instead of simply dying. She tells them that an old woman gave her the book and made her a contract with her to protect it, and she got it from her as a bet. She holds on from telling them about that bet because the story's far too long, but she tells them that her soul remained in that room because of the contract she made to protect Galder, and is quite ashamed to have lost it. Altrelze then asks him what their relationship is to one another, insinuating they are partners. But Noel hastily interrupts her, clarifying that she and Soaz have no relationship and only met by chance. Soaz is quiet for a second, but then adds that she's correct, and their only relationship is the unrequited love he feels for her. Then asking Altrelze to break her curse so that they can have a future together. Noel is speechless while Altrelze bursts out laughing. Once calm, she asks Noel what's the curse she has. She starts telling them about the morning of the day she destroyed Balhalla. It was her last day of training sessions, so she met up with her training friend, Celine, who had a cute daughter named Dalmia, and Agape. They seemed to be very close, and Noel appeared to be particularly fond of Dalmia. When they went to the carriage to meet, Agape noticed her sleepless face, and she told them that she dreamt all night long that her little sister Adora was in pain. To cheer her up, Noel gave her a piece of her favorite chocolate and told her not to worry about her little sister, as she always seemed to be very strong. However, in the tower that held Ostara's magic, Adora was being manipulated by another mage, Renan, the manager protecting Ostara, to get close to Ostara's power and steal it from there, while tears were flowing down her face in pain. Ostara also appeared to be talking to Renan, imploring him to stop and warning him that anyone exposed to her power will die. Adora was in so much pain that she passed out, but he kept controlling her hand to take the necklace, as Ostara had made it so only women could take it. Adora finally gets the necklace away from the magical protection, and Renan puts on the necklace while muting Ostara's voice, warning him that its power will destroy him. He exits Ostara's tower, leaving a bloody Adora behind, who's desperately using her last breath to call out loud to her sister and Leonuel. Agape got such a strong hunch that something was wrong in Balhalla, and so she hurried out of the last training to head back to the kingdom, Selena following after her. Leonuel told them she'll go once their duties are over, but she hurried back to Valhalla as soon as she received a note, telling her that Renan was confronting the queen and her friends. Once she arrived at Ostara's tower, she found all her friends dead and her mother being offered by Renan. Upon noticing her arrival, the psychopath smiled at her, calling her his love. Tears were flowing from her eyes, and Renan approached her and wiped her tears with his hand. In shock, Noel asked him why in the world he stole Ostara, and in reply, he knelt before her, taking her hand and telling her he did so to get her love, as his mother didn't allow them to be together because he was weaker than she was. Noel was horrified. She took her hand away from him and furiously asked him if he had killed her mother and her friends because of his feelings for her. She attacked him from behind, but he blocked it, telling her that she also didn't understand his feelings for her. Noel was fuming. She collected herself and attacked him with hundreds of magical arrows, aiming at him all at once, which he was able to block, but they did manage to break down his shield a bit. He was amazed at her sheer power, as he was having a hard time holding her off even while taking power from Ostara. Feeling he needed more, he took more power from Ostara while Noel implored him not to, as it would make him go mad. Valhalla is already up in flames as a result of their confrontation, but lunatic Renan tells her he'll risk becoming mad and destroying anything if it would make her be with him, while declaring his love for her. Talk about being toxic. Noel was able to strike Renan once, leaving him wounded on the ground. As she approached him to check if he was dead, a sudden outflow of magic came from him, and he struck her with a beam of magic that missed her head by inches. Noel noticed that instead of being destroyed by Ostara's magic, he became completely insane and was now able to use the whole of his power. The strength of the magic was so much that even the people of Valhalla had gone mad, becoming violent towards one another. So Noel decided to end Renan for once and for all, as his amount of power could bring the destruction of the world. Wounded, she used almost all her energy to trap him in a stone dome and crush him with it, but he was able to break free and was heading towards her, about to kill her, when she decided to use the destruction magic against him, knowing it would destroy Balhalla and curse her. Thus, with the last of her remaining strength and for the good of the world, she unleashed the power of the forbidden destruction magic. Now, she tells Altrelze and Soaz how the price to pay was the destruction of her home, Valhalla, and she was cursed with immortality trapped inside the body of a weasel. Noel then tells them that the destruction magic failed as she was unable to destroy Ostara's necklace. She tells Altrelze how she met Soaz by chance after 1,000 years of nothing, and that she's now determined to use the book of forbidden magic to destroy Ostara for once and for all. However, Altrelze gives her the dooming news that Ostara can't be destroyed, making Noel fall into a pit of despair by thinking she destroyed Balhalla for nothing. Both Soaz and Altrelze comfort her by telling her it was a wise decision, the one she took, as the destruction magic had put the runaway mage into a deep sleep and prevented him from destroying the whole continent. Altrelze then tells her the real reason forbidden magic was banned. Apparently, it was banned because to use it, you must pay a very high price, ultimately leading to the destruction of the caster's body. So, she informs her that she didn't become a weasel because of a curse, but rather it was the price she had to pay for having used that magic. Moreover, she then tells them that she can help them find the jewel of Ostara's necklace. They leave the basement and head to the balcony of the ruins of Ostara's towers. Noel asks Soaz why she can't see the sunset from there, and he reminds her that outside the ruins there's an eternal winter. Trying to cheer her up, Soaz takes out the picnic basket he brought for them, telling her she hasn't eaten anything all day. He hands her an orange marmalade sandwich, which Noel devours gladly, enjoying the orange flavor. Noel wonders where they got the oranges from, as Pallirod doesn't seem to have that type of land to produce oranges, and he tells her that they get their produce mostly from trade with other nations. He tells her they trade a lot with Krihubur, even though they don't hold very good relations, noting that they have better relations with another country named Shlopa. Soaz covers his mouth immediately, fearing he might have brought down Noel's mood again, as Altrelze had just told them that Ostara's jewel is found in Shlopa's imperial palace. Noel tells Soaz she's fine, but he puts on a puppy-eyed face even Noel can't resist, making her blush profusely. They get talking about how they're going to find the jewel, and Noel tells him she can't use the teleportation magic again, as she's never been to Shlopa before. Thus, Soaz begins thinking out loud different ways they can get to Shlopa faster. All the while Noel is staring at him, kinda in awe and grateful for having been able to meet him. Soaz informs Noel that he won't be able to head out to Shlopa immediately, as he has some diplomatic duties to attend to first. He has already sent out the letter to Krihubur that they won't trade foxes first to them any longer, so Soaz is awaiting for the Emperor's reply. Nonetheless, Soaz asks Noel how the jewel could have landed in Shlopa, and Noel remembers that the king of those lands at the time of the fall of Balhalla, King Arafa, was adamant in not using magic, so if he had gotten his hands on the jewel, he most probably would have hid it. Soaz then tells Noel he has an idea on how they can get to Shlopa fast, telling her that maybe instead of traveling themselves, they could send by letter the magic circles for teleportation to Shlopa, and once the letter is opened, they could use it to teleport there. Noel is surprised by his cleverness, and Soaz playfully bows before her, calling himself her assistant. Noel then follows along, gently petting his head when he grabs her hand and places it on his cheek, smiling at her with lovey-dovey eyes. Of course, Noel becomes crimson red, telling Soaz to be less intense in the number of times he confesses his love to her. Now back at Soaz's office, the letter from Krihubur finally arrives. In the letter, the king expresses that a solution to their dilemma could be that Soaz marries one of the princesses. Soaz seems to be quite disturbed by the news, as well as the Duke, and even more so, Noel. The Duke goes off, yelling how Krihubur wants to absorb Pallirod into their empire with the excuse for marriage and calling it nonsense. However, Soaz replies by telling the Duke that he thinks that sacrificing himself might be a good suggestion, making Noel's ears pop up, becoming furious at him. She jumps next to him, yelling at him up and down while demanding to know if all the things he told her about being together in the future were lies. Someone appears to be harboring more feelings than she's letting on, it seems. In order to stop Noel's furious rant, Soaz cuts her off by yelling that it was a joke to poke fun at David, which ultimately left Noel face to face with her own feelings for him. She immediately pops his bubble of hope by telling him she was only worried about him getting married because he had told her he'd help her break the curse. But we all know our homegirl was worried about something else. In any case, David is not convinced by Soaz saying he was playing a joke on him. His loyalty to Pallirod goes as far as telling Soaz to cut his head off before he marries into the Kreehuber Empire, as they would instantly turn Pallirod into an estate. With an awfully serious expression, Soaz orders the people outside to bring him his sword. Noel is appalled by his words, not believing he's about to chop off the Duke's head. A sword is placed on Soaz's hands, and still completely serious, he approaches a now kneeling Duke, who's nobly accepting his apparent fate. However, just as Soaz swings his sword at the Duke, rather than beheading him, he ends up knighting him and telling him that because of his loyalty to Pallirod, he'll reward him with that sword and a box of gold. The Duke is elated, not only because he realized that Soaz won't actually marry Kreehuber's princess, but more so because of the recognition he just got. However, Noel is, as expected, speechless. But Soaz just tells her he had to mount a dramatic scene like that one because David won't have calmed down if not. Regardless of the whole situation, David is still confused as to who Soaz is in love with. Noel then tells Soaz that it's fine if he tells David about her true identity, telling him she'll try to trust the people he trusts. Soaz is exuberant and asks if he can also inform Schloss about her, as he thinks he might be useful to them. Noel's not so convinced about him, but she ends up giving in. Just in time, Schloss appears in the office, thinking that the White Goblin had come to the castle and was looking for revenge as he had heard Noel's cry. The four of them sit down around a tea table as Soaz tells them about Noel's identity. The Duke is not fully convinced and quite worried for Soaz, as he remembers he always promised since childhood that he'd marry the last princess of Valhalla. Obviously, David never expected her to be in the form of a weasel. Nonetheless, Soaz cuts to the chase, telling them he doesn't expect them to understand everything just now, but he does expect to receive their full cooperation. He tells them that the letter sent by Kreehuber says that they've sent a delegation in order to seal the marriage proposal, which must have already departed and be on its way to Pallirod. Hence, he asks the Duke to have all the preparations to receive the delegation ready in less than a week. At the same time, Soaz tells Noel that Schloss will be assisting her while he's busy with the preparations. But Noel doesn't seem to be too confident about Schloss's abilities. However, Soaz assures her that he's a great artist, also commanding Schloss to do everything Noel says. At first, Schloss is a bit reluctant, but then he interprets his job as being Noel's escort, so he enthusiastically accepts, even offering his hand in greeting to Noel. This handshake is intercepted by Soaz, who cut it off because of sheer jealousy. Okay? A week passed, and everyone was extremely busy with the preparations to receive the Kreehuber delegation. At the same time, Noel and Schloss were working on the magical circle, but were met with a language barrier. Obviously, Schloss can't understand a sound Noel emits. After a torturous week of communicating with their hands and continuous trial and error, Schloss is finally able to draw a magic circle that allows him to understand Noel. He is very sweet-tongued, complimenting Noel's voice and telling her she's the best at magic. All the while he's suffering internally, desperately wanting to return to his guarding post. In the meantime, the delegation finally arrives, led by a man who looks oddly similar to Renan and seems to have quite a despicable character, even stepping on some servant's back. Schloss tells Noel that he's rumored to be an illegitimate child of the late Marquess, and has thus inherited the title, as Kreehuber's laws won't allow women to inherit titles, and the Marquess only had legitimate daughters. However, he's so favored by the king that it's also rumored that he's his illegitimate son. The delegation is now before Soaz and greets them before his throne. He welcomes them, inviting them to rest after their long journey in the rooms he had prepared for them. However, the Marquess named Cezek de Glennis talks back to Soaz, telling him that won't be possible. This sets the Duke off, who yells at him for having disrespected the king, but is shortly cut off by Soaz. Soaz smoothly turns the whole situation around, making the Marquess seem at fault and turning everyone present against him. The Marquess is no fool and realizes quickly that behind Soaz's angelic face lies a really witty emperor. Soaz asks him the reason why he's in such a rush, and he just gives him a gift that was sent on behalf of the king. Soaz opens it up to reveal an oil portrait of the third princess, Neia de Krihuber. All the while, the Marquess is talking about her beauty and telling him he hopes he's pleased with her looks, as if she were just an object. Gosh, I hate him. Soaz is not pleased with this gift at all, asking the Marquess what the princess thinks of the marriage proposal. He seems to be a bit unnerved by that question and blatantly lies to him by telling him she's ecstatic to be able to become a monarch herself. In reality, she was infuriated by the news, throwing a cup at the Marquess and cursing his greedy father for having sold off all of his daughters, telling him his father will regret that day. Nonetheless, Soaz isn't pleased and orders a servant to return the portrait to the delegation. The Marquess is shocked at this, asking him why he's doing that. Soaz simply tells him that he won't marry the princess because he's in love with someone else. The Marquess plays the victim card, asking Soaz to reconsider for the sake of the lives of the men in the delegation, as he tells him that if they fail, they'll surely lose their heads. Soaz is firm, telling him and his men to go rest from their journey. While heading out of the throne room, the Marquess crosses paths with Noel, instantly recognizing her and her voice, even though she's a weasel, and calls out to her. Noel, upon seeing him, freezes on the spot. There's a ruckus going on outside of the throne room, and Soaz decides to go check on it himself. There, he finds Noel starting to faint upon seeing Renan, who smiled at her and tried approaching her before Soaz caught her and stopped him dead in his tracks. With steely eyes, he tells Renan to step away and that they're going to have to talk after Noel gets better, as he noticed how Noel fainted upon seeing him. Annoyed but trying to keep his composure, Renan agrees to meet with him later. Thus, Soaz leaves while carrying a fainted Noel in his arms. Immediately after he leaves, a counselor from Krihuber grabs Renan's shoulder, scolding him for having upset the king. However, Renan turns around and covers his mouth with his hand, all while warning all the delegation that he could kill them all that instant if he wanted, and the king of Krihuber wouldn't mind, bearing a crazed look in his eyes. He leaves his delegation in shock and heads off to the room Soaz prepared for him. It's kinda scary how crazy he is. In the meantime, Noel is having a flashback about what happened the night she destroyed Balhalla, remembering she was about to execute the destruction spell but was not able to complete it as she couldn't infuse the spell with magic. Noel is having a nightmare about that last day. She doesn't seem to be able to complete the spell to destroy Ostara, all while witnessing her people go mad with its power and becoming violent against one another. She tries with all her might, but still, she doesn't have enough magic to complete the spell. Thus, she sees everyone stop and stare at her with jade eyes, completely controlled by the power of Ostara, and Ostara itself starts communicating with her through Renan. It's demanding her to memorize the destruction spell, telling her she'll give her some magic so she can complete the spell and put an end to all the violence. Suddenly, Renan's face changes to her own, commanding her to destroy everyone she ever loved and her own nation of Balhalla. Noel is terrified, and she pushes Ostara away from herself, wanting to run away from there. However, she is reminded that she's in a nightmare and that will never end until she dies. She tries to get away from the sounds of the people that died in Valhalla, but their hands keep grabbing her ankles, dragging her back in with them. Noel cries out for Soaz, needing him to save her from that place in her mind. Suddenly, she hears him calling for her, and she calls back for him. Finally, Noel wakes up in a bed while a worried Soaz stands beside her, telling her he woke her up because she seemed to be having a nightmare. Devastated, Noel asks Soaz to hug her, making Soaz's heart soar. Noel and Soaz are having a vivid discussion now that she's up. Noel insists on going to see Renan again, but Soaz is firm in refusing so, telling her that she might faint again. This angers Noel even more, asking him if he thinks she won't be able to handle it. However, I've never seen Soaz oppose her this much, as he cuts her off immediately. He reminds her that Renan holds a title of a Marquess, and as long as he's king of Pallirod, Renan won't be able to do anything to him. However, he can't give the same guarantees to Noel, so he fears she'll become a pawn in their international affairs and he won't be able to protect her from him. Noel finally understands his worries, but she expresses to him how deep her hatred and desire to kill Renan are. Her eyes light up in anger as she tells Soaz how she wants to make him pay for what he did to her, also reminding him that if she ever wants to break her curse, she must also talk to Renan as he might have information that would be useful to her. Noel then grabs Soaz's hand, reminding him he had promised he would help her with anything, asking him to fulfill that promise and help her face Renan. After a moment's consideration, Soaz finally gives in, making Noel make the cutest expression of embarrassment and gratefulness. Soaz is not slow to take advantage of this moment, telling her that if she truly is grateful to him, then she should hug him again. This embarrasses Noel even further, remembering in shame how just moments ago she had asked him for a hug. Noel also gives in and opens her arm for a hug. They finally start heading together to the room Renan is waiting in. Once they enter, Renan directly addresses Noel, telling her it's nice to see her after 1,000 years. Renan is bearing a lunatic smile while talking to Noel. They all sit down around a tea table, and Soaz starts referring to Renan with his name rather than by the made-up name of Marquess Sezic de Glennis. Noel doesn't miss a beat and directly asks him how it's possible for him to be alive, as she remembers having used all her power to destroy him. Renan smiles at her, agreeing that she did in fact try to finish him, adding that she looked beautiful while erasing her hometown from the map with a sick look on his face. Noel becomes enraged as Renan goes on talking about how her power caused the destruction of Valhalla, as if he was talking about something that was pleasant to her. However, Soaz steps in and stops him mid-sentence, telling him that Noel was a great leader and that he should mind his words more. Noel is grateful for Soaz talking for her. She calms down, and she asks Renan again how he survived her attack. Renan snaps out of it and finally answers her, first asking her if she also dreams every night of that day. Noel is shocked, but Renan tells her he too dreams of that day every night, saying how difficult it must have been for her to have that nightmare while being cursed with eternal life. Renan then surprises everyone by using magic, manipulating the tea in his cup. Noel is astounded, recognizing the spell from the Forbidden Book. Noel is furious, and Renan tells her that his body is magic now just like hers, telling her he now is a member of the Kalasha family, like she is. With crazed eyes, he gets close to her, telling her that they are the only ones left of the legacy and talking about their curse. Luckily, Soaz interposes between the two of them, telling Renan to calm himself and talk properly to Noel. He steps back and sits again, losing the lunatic look in his eyes and telling them that he won't allow anyone to control him in his life as he's finally become a Kalasha. And that's it for today, guys. What did you think? As always, don't forget to like the video and comment for the next part so we know you want more. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications for updates. See you in the next one!